Okay, so we're going to have a look at the separation of powers in Australia. When we look throughout history, there have been times where the people in power have had too much power. Even in recent history, there is Stalin, Mussolini, and Hitler, all of whom were dictators with extreme power over their countries, all within the last 100 years. Let's have a little look back in time. In 1215, which is in the medieval period, King John was seen to have had too much power. His barons, or nobles, pretty much forced him to sign the Magna Carta, which translates to the Great Charter. The Magna Carta was seen as the Magna Carta was the first ever document to establish the idea that everyone, even the king, was not above the law. It was a turning point in human rights, and it can be seen as a foundation to the British Constitution. Much has changed in the 800 years since the Magna Carta, but the idea that everyone, even the king or head of state, is subject to the law can be seen in the principle of the separation of powers. Fast forward to 1788, and here is an extract from an essay by James Madison, advocating for the separation of powers within the government of the United States. It highlights the reasons why we need to prevent excessive power. So it says, if men were angels, no government would be necessary. If angels were to govern men, neither external nor internal controls on government would be necessary. In framing a government which is to be administered by men over men, the great difficulty lies in this. You must first enable the government to control the governed, and in the next place, oblige it to control itself. So that's Federalist 51 by James Madison, and published under the pseudonym of Publius. So this extract is saying that men are when I say men, this is the type of language they used in 1788, but humankind is the reason that we need a government in the first place, because humankind is predisposed to exercise power over other people. So James Madison here is saying that if we're getting humans to control humans, so humans in a government controlling humans, we need to put something in place that is going to prevent them from pretty much exercising too much power, okay, or becoming too powerful. All right. So the overall objective or purpose of this principle, the separation of powers, is to prevent the concentration of power. That is, to make sure that power is spread out. Okay, and here are the contents of the Australian Constitution. If I just get my highlighter here, we can see that Section 1 outlines the legislative power. Where is Section 1? Section 1 here. The legislative power. Okay, this is Section 1. We can see that Section 61 outlines the executive power. So the executive power here, outlining the executive power. And we've got Chapter 71 here, and that is outlining the judicial power. So we've got the three branches of government here, with the legislative, the executive, and the judicial power. Okay. So this is from the Constitution here. Legislative power. The legislative power of the Commonwealth shall be vested in a federal parliament, which shall consist of the Queen, a Senate, and a House of Representatives, which is hereinafter called the Parliament or the Parliament of the Commonwealth. Executive power, and I think that is supposed to be 61, so sorry about that. And Section 61, outlining the executive power. The executive power of the Commonwealth is vested in the Queen and is exercisable by the Governor-General as the Queen's representative, and extends to the execution and maintenance of this Constitution and of the laws of the Commonwealth. So, see my yellow highlighter, the execution, not a very good highlighter, but anyway, and the maintenance of this Constitution, the execution of the Constitution. So in reality, though, executive power is exercised by the Prime Minister and Cabinet, which are high-ranking ministers. Section, I think it's still 61, sorry about that. Section 61 of the Constitution outlines the Federal Executive Council, which is to advise the Governor-General on the running of the government. All ministers, including the Prime Minister, are members of the Council. And Section 71, the judicial power and the court. So the judicial power of the government shall be vested in a federal Supreme Court to be called the High Court of Australia, and in such other federal courts as the Parliament creates, and in such other courts as it invests with federal jurisdiction. The High Court shall consist of a Chief Justice and so many other justices, not less than 2, as the Parliament prescribes. And here we have the image of the separation of powers. So, the legislature is the Parliament. Okay, so this is the legislature here. I'll highlight this here. Okay, so we're here. This is the legislature. Actually, can I point it? So I'm just getting a hang of this thing. Pointer options, laser pointer. Here we go. This is the legislature here. So the legislature is the Parliament, and let's just have a quick flip through to what the Parliament is. We did talk about this in class. The Parliament is made up of the head of state, represented by the Governor-General, the Senate, which is the upper house, and the House of Representatives, which is the lower house. Together, they make the Parliament of Australia. Okay? So this is Parliament. The legislature has the power to make and change the law. Remember this perhaps by thinking that legislature creates legislation or laws. Okay. The executive branch has the power to put the law into action. So here's the executive government here. It has the power to put the laws into action. The executive government is made up of the Governor-General, the Prime Minister, and other senior ministers. Ministers are given government departments to oversee. For example, the Minister for Immigration and Citizenship is in charge of immigration and citizenship. So therefore, the Immigration Minister needs to be responsible for ensuring that immigration laws are running smoothly across the country. The Immigration Minister administers or implements these laws that are made in the Parliament. So these guys put these laws into action. Okay. The judiciary here has the power to interpret and judge the law. So this branch is occupied by the High Court and other federal courts. If a law is contested or challenged, then it's up to the High Court to decide if the law is in breach of the Constitution. If a law is deemed unconstitutional, then it is invalid or overruled. So these are the branches of government. This is the separation of powers. So each branch has a different power relating to the running of Australia. Okay, so is it a true separation of powers? The executive is drawn from the Parliament or legislature, and members of the judiciary, the High Court judges, are appointed by the Governor-General. So in reality, no, Australia does not have a true separation of powers, but it is still a separation of powers.